Hey, welcome to Sleep Crime Stories. Before we begin, let me ask, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? A quick comment and a subscribe go a long way, it really helps. Now, turn down the lights, and let's begin tonight's case. From love to hate, on the night of December 1st, 2010, Staff Sergeant Nathan Payette was in a hurry. He was late for duty at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. By a strange coincidence, his alarm clock, which never failed to go off, did not ring today. Nathan woke up at 11 p.m. and woke up his wife, Michelle. He took a shower, said goodbye to his family. Then he went out to the garage. He was about to put on his uniform and start the car. Suddenly, loud shots rang out from behind. Mr. Payette's children and wife came running to the noise. On the doorstep stood Nathan, bleeding and staggering from side to side. It was obvious that he was about to fall. Michelle was terrified and rushed towards her husband to pick him up, but not in time. The father of the family collapsed to the floor. Around 11:30 p.m., 911 received a call. "My husband has been shot. He's bleeding. Help him," Mrs. Payette screamed into the phone. The dispatcher immediately explained to the woman how to administer first aid. Michelle tried to give artificial respiration to her spouse. However, it did not bring relief. After the arrival of rescuers, he was taken to the nearest hospital. Doctors did everything possible to save the patient. Despite this, it was not possible to bring the young man back to life. The neck wound became fatal for 28-year-old Nathan Payette. After Mrs. Payette was informed of her husband's death, her life was divided into before and after. An exemplary family man, a valiant serviceman, was murdered on the doorstep of his own home in Las Vegas. His death caused a public outcry. Relatives, acquaintances, and just concerned citizens were waiting for explanations from the police. Who could decide to such lawlessness? What motives pursued the criminal and was subsequently brought to justice? These and other questions we will try to analyze together with you. Nathan Joseph Villagomez Payette was born on February 12, 1982, in the village of Taomining, Guam. The territory of the island is not part of the United States of America, but it is a possession of the United States. At the same time, the United States determines foreign policy and does not interfere in internal affairs. Guam is a small island in the Pacific Ocean. Due to its paradisiacal beauty and historical past, this area is especially popular among tourists. Nathan was not only born in an amazing region, he was also fortunate to have a large and loving family. He had 3 brothers, Matthew, Anthony, Eric, and 1 sister, Carmela. The children were very friendly and helped their parents in everything. Nathan himself was different from the others in that he never caused trouble. He was a caring child at home and a diligent student at school. The boy was very sociable, so he easily made friends. He was the soul of the company. His name was always on the rumor. Perhaps there was no one who did not want to communicate with him. Recalled about him brother Eric. Living near the ocean, Nathan loved swimming from childhood. Later he began surfing. He spent all his free time on the beach, enjoying the sun and life. Nathan met his future wife during his studies at South High School. The educational institution was located in the neighboring town of Santa Rita. Michelle Anvantachuk was attracted to him at first sight. Young people began to spend time together. With each day, their affection for each other only grew. They never parted. Together they studied at school, prepared for classes, helped with household chores. Strong teenage friendship was replaced by tender love. When Michelle was 16 years old, a terrible grief befell her family. Her mother died. Therefore, the girl spent all her free time helping her sister. Melissa, the eldest of Chuck's family, took on the role of mother and mistress of the house. Nathan supported her in everything she did and helped to look after the younger children. In 2000, after graduation, Nathan decided to propose to Michelle. The girl happily accepted. Their families did not have the opportunity to have a wedding. Therefore, the couple, with the blessing of their parents, decided to move in together. To earn a living, the guy got a job as a receptionist in a local hotel. He earned not badly. There was enough money. However, like all young people, Nathan and Michelle were ambitious. They made plans for their own home and independence. Soon their son, Dion, was born in the Payette family. The income was no longer enough to cover the necessary expenses. Therefore, the guy thought about a job that could provide his family with a decent existence. This desire led Nathan to join the Air Force. After graduation, Nathan was assigned to the Elmendorf Air Base in Anchorage, Alaska. Michelle was left alone with the baby, but the family had money. In addition, after a while, the young people's dream came true. They built their own house. In it was born a second child, a daughter named Niara. The head of the family made success in the military field. This favored the desire to achieve everything that he and his wife had previously been deprived of. Finally, 6 years after their engagement, Michelle and Nathan had a big wedding. My mom was extremely proud that her youngest son was the first to go out and achieve something, Eric said. In 2006, Nathan was transferred to the Davis-Monthan military base in Arizona. He was promoted to the position of weapons loading team leader for the A-10 Thunderbolt attack aircraft of one of the Essex squadrons. There he also trained in logistics training and material management. Nathan definitely loved his job and did it with dedication. Most importantly, he did it with the best of intentions. He was a son of his country. One of his co-workers characterized him. In 2007, Nathan and his family moved to Nellis Air Base. The new job was located near Las Vegas, Nevada. There, the young man was assigned as an assistant junior officer in charge of the supply section for maintenance of combat aircraft. Along with professional growth, the family of the protagonist grew. Soon, the Payette couple had 2 more sons, Drawson and David. Michelle fell in love with Las Vegas. She thought it was the best place to live, so Nathan decided to make her happy. He chose the most suitable house for a large family, spacious and bright. In addition, the future family home was 30 to 40 minutes away from the military base. Nathan made the down payment with his savings. The only thing left to do was to divide the family's income and expenses wisely. Maybe he could save some money temporarily, at least until Mr. Payette's next prospects. At first, Michelle was delighted with her husband's surprise. She set about organizing the everyday life in the new house. However, over time, the demands of the couple began to grow. The family spent more than Nathan earned. The happiness of buying a new house began to fade. It is well known that financial difficulties have ruined the relationship of more than one couple. Nathan and Michelle were no exception to this axiom. The man realized that the deplorable situation had to be corrected. Therefore, in mid-2009, when the USA was at war with Iraq, Nathan enlisted as a volunteer. His departure took 6 months. During this time, the family's condition improved considerably, which Nathan could not help but enjoy. After a short rest at home, Sergeant Payette decided to return to Iraq. While Nathan was risking his life, Michelle was overcome by anxiety. She had intrusive thoughts. The prospect of being alone with 4 children frightened her. Accustomed to a certain standard of living, she found it hard to imagine otherwise. To take her mind off her worries, Mrs. Payette took a job. The firm that took the new hire was a corporate credit card telemarketing firm. Employment brought variety and new acquaintances to the woman's routine. In addition, Michelle wanted to have her own safety cushion. She did not rule out having her own business in the future, so she actively engaged in self-development. She began to attend the School of Aesthetics. Everything went on as usual while Nathan was at home. When he left, Michelle became bored. The birth of the children, the endless travels, and her husband's service cooled the relationship between the couple. Nathan was away for long periods of time, and Michelle wanted to be loved and desired, so she took a lover. It became her colleague Michael Rudolph Rodriguez, 31-year-old handsome and a local womanizer. Plus, the man was devious and dishonest. He spent 2007 in prison for forgery and attempted theft. Michelle couldn't resist Sweet Rudy. That's what they jokingly called Michael behind his back. By the end of 2009, Nathan returned home. It seemed that the distance and the ordeal went in favor of the family relationship. However, this was not the case. The wife was playing a double game. She did not want to lose her husband. having an infatuation on the side. Therefore, she tried to please him in every way. Nathan was fascinated by the changes that had taken place in her appearance and character. The children had been growing up without a father for a long time, which had a negative impact on their education. He decided not to leave his family for a long time. It did not occur to him that the striking changes Michelle could be associated with treason. So pure and faithful was Nathan himself. In Las Vegas, a man found a good way to earn money. In order to get double pay, he started working night shifts. In addition, Nathan took up private teaching. He developed training for simplified baseball for young children. As for Michelle's pretense, it didn't last long. As soon as the usual standard of living began to fall, the spouse changed her attitude to the opposite. After a while, the problems in the couple's relationship went beyond. At Thanksgiving in 2010, the young family was visited by brother Eric and his wife Veronica. For the first time, the guests sensed the tension between the pets. They had changed beyond recognition. It seemed that the feelings between Michelle and Nathan completely disappeared. The couple could not hide from outsiders not only personal but also financial problems. Almost empty pantry and refrigerator. A week later, on December 1st, 2010, a strange communication took place between Mrs. Payette and Mr. Rodriguez. At 11:12 p.m., Michelle received a text message from Michael. "Hope you are feeling better," the man wrote. "Van Dyke's contract for tomorrow is almost finalized." 2 minutes later, he sent another text. "If you're not feeling well, let me know. I'll give you a couple days to rest. Remember, I appreciate your help." At 11:19 p.m., Michelle replied, "My husband just recently woke me up. Right now, he is trying to leave the house, but I think he's going to be late today. LOL. I'm sorry the contract is giving you so much trouble." A couple months before the tragedy, Michelle didn't want to be with Nathan, nor was she going to leave him, because she realized that breaking up wouldn't do anything except headaches and empty pockets. "I don't think he will forgive me and support me after the divorce," Michelle thought. The alimony would hardly be enough for a normal life. In addition, Mrs. Payette was aware of her husband's military insurance. In the event of his death, payments totaling about $650,000 were due to the wife. These sinful thoughts did not give rest to the woman's sick mind. One day she shared them with Michael. Surprisingly, he was intrigued. So the terrible idea of Nathan's former lover turned into a cunning plan. Mr. Rodriguez knew that Michelle and he could not do it alone. It was too complicated, so he enlisted his friend Corey Alexis Hawkins in the criminal scheme. The 33-year-old mercenary had about 9 convictions, each one of them related to theft or fraud. Corey was a hardened criminal, so he agreed to help on the condition of a substantial reward. He estimated his participation at $20,000. After thinking hard, Michelle and Michael agreed. A little later, a couple more people joined their group. 23-year-old Jessica Austin, Corey's girlfriend, and her friend Shannon. By the way, Jessica's friend was not particularly intelligent. She earned her living by starring in adult movies. Shannon was offered 5% of Corey and Jessica's royalties for her help. The fabulous money turned the woman's head. The original plan was to shoot Nathan in his Chevrolet Tahoe. After that, the criminals intended to drive the car with the man's body and leave it in the parking lot of one of the apartment complexes. Jessica had to buy the things necessary for the crime: men's gloves, a car cover, and a fragrance. Shannon's job was to provide an alibi for Michael. If anything, she had to confirm that on the day of murder, Michael was by her side. On December 1st, 2010, Michelle felt ill. She deviated from her usual schedule and reported home at around 5:30 p.m. Michelle did not normally arrive so early. Her classes at beauty school were ending late. Around 10:40 p.m. Mrs. Payette's foot crossed the threshold of the house just 5 minutes before Nathan left for work. On that unfortunate day, Michelle saw her husband sleeping on the sofa. She woke him up and suggested that they go upstairs to lie together. He didn't object. That was the last night the couple spent together. Late for work, Nathan went downstairs. Just at that time, Michelle was corresponding with Michael. In order not to arouse suspicion, the accomplices corresponded using code words. The instigator himself, along with his accomplice, was sitting in a black Cadillac SRX. The car was parked just ahead of the future victim's house. The perpetrators wore latex gloves so as not to leave any traces. Michael realized that the sergeant's military training could play into the latter's hands, so he decided to take him by surprise and approached him from behind. Michael drew his pistol and shot Nathan 5 times in the back. Michael quickly ran out of the garage, got into his car, and drove away. The perpetrators then fled to a previously prepared place. They burned the clothes in the fireplace and disposed of the rest of the evidence. After that, Michael with Shannon went to the hotel. In this way, the couple wanted to create an alibi. In parallel, Jessica engaged in a thorough cleaning of the apartment in which they stayed. Together with the emergency services, police officers arrived at the scene. They were stunned by what had happened. The neighborhood where the Payette family lived was considered one of the exemplary ones. Detective Todd Williams first decided to examine the scene of the shooting. The garage door was unlocked. There was a noticeable odor of iron inside the room. Blood was smeared on the walls and the car, and traces of it were also visible on the floor. Next to Nathan's uniform were his keys and wallet. Since the valuables were untouched, a robbery murder was ruled out. After examining the scene, Detective Lori Anderson decided to talk to the victim's wife. Michelle explained what had happened. For some reason, she added that the family was struggling financially. This gave the police some ideas. Maybe Nathan was hiding something from his wife. For example, a gambling addiction, debts, or an affair on the side. At least that would have cleared up the attack. Besides, all the evidence pointed to Nathan being deliberately set up. The police examined the victim's cell phone. It contained only pictures of his wife and children. This convinced the officers that Mr. Payette was a decent man. The investigation continued. The next step in the search for the perpetrator was to canvass the neighborhood. Statistically speaking, there's always someone who saw or heard something. This was the case with Nathan. Some neighbors reported that they had seen a car parked near the Payette house. The car was driven by a man wearing a brown sweatshirt. After shots were fired, the vehicle immediately drove away. Detectives finally had a lead. Nathan's family was shocked to learn what had happened. His family was on the first flight out of Guam. They were waiting for answers. His mother, Carmelita Payette, cried the whole way. The woman couldn't believe her son had died so early. The relatives finally reached the victim's home. Michelle threw herself into her mother-in-law's arms and then lost consciousness. Nathan's mother sensed something unnatural in her daughter-in-law's reaction. For some reason, the fainting seemed faked. The investigators decided to talk to Mrs. Payette again. They asked her about the car that the witnesses had seen. Unexpectedly, she said that her colleague, Michael Rodriguez, had a similar car. Why Michelle gave out this information remains unclear. However, thanks to her, the puzzle began to take shape. Police later determined that Michelle had simply blabbed the truth, or the plan the perpetrators were hatching was flawed. Detectives looked into Michael's identity. The man's criminal record heightened suspicions. He was brought in for questioning, to which he responded calmly. Mr. Rodriguez said that on the day of Nathan's murder, at around 9 p.m., he went out shopping. In the supermarket, the man met an interesting girl named Shannon. From his words, they had a long conversation, after which they decided to continue their acquaintance in the hotel room. Michael explained that they arrived at the hotel around 11 p.m. To verify the man's words, the officers called Shannon. She did indeed confirm the romantic encounter. However, the detectives sensed a catch, so the next step was to examine the information in Mrs. Payette's phone. Specialists managed to recover the correspondence Michelle had with Michael for a year. Their communication was interesting. On the day of Nathan's murder, the couple discussed a contract with a certain Van Dyke. The conversation was more like encryption than a business negotiation. It was probably how the two men planned the crime. Investigators were almost certain that both were involved, but sufficient evidence had not yet been obtained, so they decided to let Michael go until the circumstances of the case are clarified. After examining Michelle's cell phone, the detectives called her back in for questioning. She was visibly agitated and seemed to be hiding something. Michelle realized that the officers knew more than she wanted to know, so she told them about her affair with Michael. A little later, she confessed that a few months before her husband's death, she and her lover had decided to kill Nathan. The woman explained that the action was planned in order to obtain insurance payments. Mrs. Payette justified herself and assured that she had repented and changed her mind. It was as if she had changed her mind at one stage in preparation for the crime. She felt sorry for her husband, and she even tried to interfere with the plan. So she turned off her husband's alarm clock. Michelle was counting on her accomplices not waiting for Nathan or missing him, but the investigators did not believe in the woman's remorse. Her correspondence eloquently testified otherwise. In addition, she sent Michael a cute, smiley face right after she learned of her husband's death. After a while, Shannon came to the police station to confess. The woman must have realized her predicament. However, her involvement in the case was clearly embellished. She explained that Michael had forced her to provide an alibi. Jessica asked for my help. Her friends wanted to teach a big drug dealer a lesson. My job was only to cover up the involvement of one of the attackers. I thought it would be a way to get justice, she explained. She then added that, on the night of the attack, Michael told the whole truth. Shannon assured police officers, as soon as I realized I was being used, I immediately went to the police. In addition, I feared for my life. There is no telling what they would have done to me. The woman's words were confirmed by the hotel's CCTV footage. It became clear that Michael and Shannon arrived at the hotel not at 11 p.m., as Michael himself said, but at 11:40 p.m. Her testimony led detectives to Corey and Jessica. Corey had long denied any involvement in the case. He knew what a guilty plea would do to a repeat offender. But Jessica did reveal her role in the sinister plan. To honor the young sergeant's memory, Nathan's family and friends gathered on December 7, 2010, in the chapel at the Nellis base. Michelle decided to skip the ceremony. She was clearly not in the mood for it. Many comrades remembered the man's stamina and military hardiness. The commander of the squadron told about the feats he had accomplished for his country and his family. Everyone characterized Nathan as a reliable comrade at the same time, they noted his modesty and decency. In his speech, Eric Pyatt recalled, "My brother has always been an example for me and the rest of my family. He truly loved life, was devoted to his wife and children. Everything Nathan ever did, he did in the name of his homeland, love, and friends." On December 9th, the remains of the slain man were transported to Guam. On December 15th, a requiem mass was held at St. Francis Church in Tamuning. Military honors were paid to the sergeant at the Pity City Cemetery on the island of Guam. His funeral was spectacular. The cortege consisted of 36 motorcycles. Upon arrival at the burial site, 6 officers carried out a casket covered with a U.S. flag. Afterward, 21 shots shook the sky. Nathan Pyatt was given a hero's farewell. Michael Rodriguez, Corey Hawkins, and Jessica Austin were arrested without bail on December 8, 2010. The next day, the same fate awaited Michelle Pyatt. The police feared for the mental state of the accused. She was placed under surveillance to prevent her from committing suicide. On January 4, 2011, in Clark County District Court, the 4 accomplices were read the charges. They were charged with conspiracy to commit murder and robbery with a firearm, and murder with a firearm. Michael and Corey were additionally charged with possession of a firearm. The trials dragged on for 3 years. Some of the defendants denied involvement. Armed with a strong defense team, the defendants filed more than one motion. Their aim was to exclude certain evidence and proofs from the case. However, the court rejected all the applications. They only delayed the inevitable punishment by postponing the sessions from one date to another. On September 21, 2015, the trial for the murder of Nathan Pyatt did take place. Michael Rudolph Rodriguez was the first to stand trial. To avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty. On September 29, 2015, the man was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Michael's appeal of the sentence was denied. At the time the sentence was announced, the defendant expressed no emotion. Apparently, he did not regret the crime he had committed. The trial of Michelle Pyatt took place in a Las Vegas court a month later. The woman continued to insist that she had changed her mind about killing her husband. When the judge allowed Michelle to say a few words in her defense, she turned to the parents of the murdered man. With tears in her eyes, she apologized to them. "I loved Nathan and our children. I was very confused and made a big mistake," Michelle pronounced and once again fainted. The prosecutor said she did not believe the defendant wanted to thwart the conspiracy. There was a lot of evidence to the contrary. No one could understand how a woman, a mother of 4 children, could become so cold-blooded. The judge sided with the prosecution. Michelle was clearly involved in the crime, at least more than she claimed in court. Michelle soon pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder with a firearm. This helped her avoid capital punishment. The Pyatt family also asked the court not to impose the death penalty on the former relative. At the end of the hearing, the judge called Michelle's crime incomprehensible and unfathomable. In October 2015, it was the turn of a third defendant, Corey Alexis Hawkins. The man also agreed to a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. Corey was sentenced to life in prison. His attorney's petition to ever get parole was denied. The judge reasoned that the defendant helped plan the crime and was nearby at the time of the shooting. Jessica Austin also took a plea deal with prosecutors. She was later charged with conspiracy to commit murder. In March 2016, Michelle was given her final sentencing. She once again cited her unstable emotional state that led her to commit the crime. She again asked Nathan's family to ever forgive her. Carmelita Pyatt was a deeply religious person. She could see that her former daughter-in-law was remorseful for what she had done and was truly tormented by remorse. Her soul needed forgiveness. Therefore, Nathan's mother forgave Michelle in the courtroom. Afterwards, she added that the most important punishment in life, Michelle had already suffered. "Your children don't want to see you anymore. They're afraid you'll do to them what you did to their father," Carmelita explained. "Our family does not pursue the principle of an eye for an eye," Eric Pyatt informed her. I think Michelle was shaken by her mother-in-law's words. Her family will move on without her and the children will grow up knowing their mother is a murderer. Eric's wife, Veronica, also asked to speak out. She told Michelle that she hated her, after which she added that the relative dishonors the family name she carries. In pursuit of greed and the love of a man she didn't know, Michelle destroyed her family. She became the murderer of the man she once loved immensely, with whom she shared a bed and built a future. Could Michelle have imagined how her unbridled ambition would turn out? Hardly. This category of people lives in a perpetual pursuit of happiness without appreciating what they have. Nathan, unlike her, had lived his whole life giving of himself. He was often sleep-deprived, risked his health and his life. Thanks to this, the man fulfilled his beloved's dreams, but never found her recognition. The children of the Pyatt family will remain traumatized for life. They will hardly be able to create strong families and socialize. The painful experience of their parents will remain in front of their eyes for the rest of their days. There is only one good thing about this story. The 4 criminals will stay where they belong. Still with me? Good, that means you're ready for the rest. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more cases just like this one. Australia is one of the most magical places on Earth. It's the smallest continent, a land of eternal summer with unique flora and fauna. This very location is unique. Australia is the only country in the world that occupies an entire continent. Many people dream of this enchanting country, isolated from the rest of the world, as a place to chase their dreams. But in our story, one grand dream was not meant to come true. On March 5, 2021, Jasmine Kaur finished her work shift and headed to the car park. A young man approached her and called her aside. Jasmine knew him, so she followed without fear. The next moment, he grabbed her by the neck with his strong hand and forcefully placed her in a nearby car. Jasmine resisted. She tried to scream and ask to be let go, but the choking pressure on her neck cut off her oxygen. She went limp and the abductor placed her in the car. He hurriedly got behind the wheel and drove away. 18-year-old Jasmine came to Australia from India in pursuit of her dream. After her father's tragic death, She dreamed of becoming a nurse to help people. She wanted to obtain a quality medical education. With her mother's blessing, she joyfully accepted her aunt and uncle's offer to move to Australia. Thus, she settled in Adelaide with her close relatives and successfully enrolled in university. Studying was hard due to the heavy workload, but Jasmine was persistent and goal-orientated, never straying from her dream. She never missed a lecture, read mountains of textbooks, and helped her classmates with notes. Thanks to her perseverance, she earned the respect of her professors and became a role model for her peers. Jasmine Kaur's relentless determination not only allowed her to study, but also to find a job to gain practical experience. 2 years into her studies, Jasmine Kaur landed a student nurse position at the Southern Cross Homes Hospital in Plympton North, a suburb of Adelaide. At a university social event, Jasmine met Tariq Jat Singh. The two quickly struck up a friendship. Both being from India, they had a lot in common to talk about. Tariq Jat Singh came from an ordinary Indian family. After finishing school with flying colors, he aimed for a better education and moved to Australia to pursue a bachelor's degree in information technology. A kind and empathetic young man, he studied hard and worked to afford a comfortable living in the bustling city. The young people spent a lot of time together, hanging out at work and catching up at cafes between university lectures. Over time, their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. By April 2020, the young couple was no longer hiding their relationship and started planning a future together. Jasmine was smitten with Tariq Jat's attention and care. He continuously expressed his devotion and love. Initially, it seemed like he was just very caring, but gradually his attentiveness became more intrusive. Tariq Jat started inquiring about Jasmine's every move, justifying it by saying he was concerned for her well-being. Secretly, he began checking whom she was interacting with on social media, and then started demanding reports on her every step. Jasmine felt that Tariq Jat's behavior had crossed all boundaries, but he managed to convince her every time that his total control was purely out of love and care. He would apologize and promise not to invade her personal space without reason, but these were just empty promises. Over time, Jasmine felt increasingly suffocated in her relationship with Tariq Jat. He strongly opposed her interactions with family and friends. This isolation deeply hurt her, leading Jasmine to make a crucial decision to end the relationship and free herself from the pressure. With her family's support, Jasmine informed Tariq Jat that she was ending their relationship. He reacted with fury, screaming, cursing, and threatening retribution against her family. Jasmine was emotionally drained. She took leave and went to stay with her mother in India. But even there, Tariq Jat did not leave her alone. From afar, he used emotional blackmail, threatening to end his life. Tariq Jat took drastic measures to capture his ex-girlfriend's attention. At one point, he attempted to end his life by consuming several packs of sleeping pills, recording the act, and sending the video to Jasmine, hoping to elicit pity and compassion. However, his plan backfired, and instead of winning her back, he ended up in the hospital under medical care. After receiving the necessary therapy, Tariq Jat returned to his job and studies. It appeared he had accepted the breakup with Jasmine and started a new life without her. But on March 6, 2021, Jasmine Kaur did not show up for work. As evening fell and darkness enveloped the streets, a car swiftly made its way through the city, adeptly avoiding surveillance cameras. After an hour's drive, the car came to a stop. The young man exited and helped the girl out. She was weak from the prolonged lack of oxygen. With cold efficiency, he retrieved tape and a cable from the trunk. Without a word, and with brute cruelty, he sealed her mouth and eyes with the tape, causing her eyelashes to stick together and pulling tightly on the delicate skin of her face. Then, the man tied her hands behind her back. She writhed in fear. Silence. There was nowhere to run. He pushed her, and when she fell, he tied her legs with the same cable. The victim moaned and squirmed on the dusty road. Her long, dark hair tangled, and her clothes became dirty. After binding her legs, he grabbed her hair, and with a swift slash cut across her throat. The victim went silent. He placed the knife in a bag and carelessly lifted the immobilized girl off the ground into the trunk. Closing the lid, he lit a cigarette. He took a few puffs before getting back into the car to continue his drive. He drove through the evening and all night. Only in the early morning did his car stop at Death's Peak. The man dug a shallow grave, removed the victim from the trunk, and laid her in the ground. Thus, the young woman was buried alive by her abductor. But she was still alive. Her eyes didn't see the horror of her situation. Lying in the cold earth, trying to breathe, her nostrils filled with fine sand, the weight of the soil pressing down on her. She was unable to move. Fear and the realization of complete helplessness took over her mind. She could only moan, briefly, then she fell asleep, forever. So easily and simply, one person decided they had the right to determine another's fate. But evil must and will be punished. On March 6, 2021, Jasmine Kaur did not show up for work at the Southern Cross Care elderly home in North Plimpton, where she worked as a nurse without any prior warning. Her supervisor contacted her family. On the same day, she was declared missing. A search began. Surveillance footage from that evening was reviewed, but there was nothing that could aid the investigation in finding Jasmine Kaur. The last time the young nursing student was seen was leaving her job at Southern Cross Homes in Plimpton North around 10 p.m. on March 5. Tarikjot Singh quickly became the prime suspect with a motive, especially since Jasmine had filed a harassment complaint against him with the police just weeks before her disappearance. When first questioned by police on March 6, Singh claimed he couldn't remember the last time he saw Jasmine Kaur and insisted he was at home on the night of her death. The following day, Singh informed the officers that Jasmine had taken her own life and that he had buried her in the Flinders Ranges. He led the police to the burial site, where they discovered Jasmine's shoes, glasses, and work ID badge in a trash bin, along with zip ties. She was exhumed 2 days after Tarikjot Singh was interrogated by the police at Morialta Creek, 40 kilometers north of Hakka, approximately 100 meters from the road and nearly a 5-hour drive from the location he allegedly took her. Tarikjot Singh was arrested and held in custody pending trial. Investigators determined that in the days leading up to her disappearance, Tarikjot Singh had meticulously prepared for the abduction and death of the young woman. It was found that on the day of the kidnapping, Singh had purchased zip ties, tape, and rope from a hardware store. Searches conducted at the residence where Tarikjot lived uncovered several SIM cards and phones, proving that he had carefully planned the abduction, even going as far as changing his SIM card to fabricate an alibi. On the night of the abduction, Singh switched cars with his apartment neighbor and asked him to cover his shift, then headed to the elderly home where Jasmine was working that day. Initially, Singh was charged with failing to report a death to the coroner before the charge was upgraded to homicide. Following the investigation, 21-year-old Tarikjot Singh from Karalta Park was charged with the homicide of 21-year-old Jasmine Kaur after her body was found buried at Morialta Creek. Singh first appeared via video link before the Port Augusta Magistrates Court on March 9, where Judge Gregory Fisher ordered the accused's name and face to be withheld for 30 days. In July 2021, hearings in the Jasmine Kaur case began under Judge Adam Kimber in the Supreme Court. It emerged during the hearings that Singh was in Australia on a student visa and had spent time in a short-term psychiatric ward that year. Prosecutors told the Supreme Court that 21-year-old Jasmine Kaur was assassinated a month after she reported her ex-partner Tarikjot Singh for stalking her. Singh pleaded guilty to the of Jasmine Kaur in March 2021, and the details of his crime were outlined during the sentencing. Prosecutor Carmen Mateo stated that Jasmine Kaur endured absolute terror after Singh abducted her from her workplace in Adelaide on March 5, 2021. The court heard Jasmine Kaur suffered an extraordinary level of cruelty after her former boyfriend kidnapped her, bound her with tape and zip ties, and buried her alive with her eyes bound and conscious at Death's Peak near Hakka in the Flinders Ranges. Evidence provided by the pathologist who conducted Jasmine's autopsy indicated that Singh made superficial cuts to her throat, but these did not cause her death. An autopsy report presented showed Jasmine Kaur died on March 6, 2021, several hours after being buried. Horrific details emerged during the sentencing at the Supreme Court. Prosecutor Carmen Mateo stated she had to be acutely aware of her hopeless situation, and she must have consciously suffered from what can only be described as absolute terror. Mateo also mentioned that the act was inefficient, and Jasmine Kaur was made to suffer. It is unknown when her throat was cut, unknown when and how she ended up in that grave or was placed there, and unknown when she was dug out, other than the accusation suggests that it must have happened while she was still alive and being prepared for burial. During the initial investigation into Jasmine Kaur's death, Tarak Jat denied any wrongdoing, continuously asserting that she took her own life. However, Judge Adam Kimber stated that Singh prepared a series of calculated steps over a certain period of time to commit the crime. Prosecutor Carmen Mateo informed that Ms. Kaur had filed a police report claiming that Tarak Singh was stalking her on February 9th, about a month before she was assassinated. She said that Singh began cold and clinical planning of Ms. Kaur's death after their relationship ended. The manner in which Jasmine Kaur was murdered indeed involved an extraordinary level of cruelty, she added. Martin Anders, the attorney representing Singh's interests, stated that 2 months before the tragic incident, the Singh and Kaur families had a meeting that resulted in a negative decision regarding the continuation of their relationship. He also mentioned that Singh's reasoning was seriously impaired following the end of their relationship. This is not someone who was really well grounded in terms of understanding what desires were at play, how these issues evolved, and how he might have properly reasoned in the circumstances he faced. The lawyer explained, he took actions that destroyed not only her life, but his own. Martin Anders commented on Singh's deteriorating mental health and his experiencing hallucinations following Jasmine Kaur's demise. However, a psychiatric evaluation concluded that Tarak Singh was fully sane at the time and he was charged with assassination. During the sentencing, the court heard about several messages Singh wrote, but never sent to Jasmine in the days leading up to her death. These messages contained statements such as, "You're bad luck that I'm still alive, just wait and see. Every one of them will get an answer in deep inside what I feel but can't overcome." The prosecution informed the court that Singh downloaded a map of surveillance cameras across Adelaide the day before abducting Jasmine. Ms. Mateo said that surveillance footage showed Singh purchasing zip ties from a hardware store on the afternoon of the abduction. She also mentioned that Singh removed the SIM card from his phone, placed it in another device, and left it at his home to engage cell towers that would create the impression he was at or near his home. He punished her, a defenseless, innocent girl, for she said. According to the prosecution, he forced her into the car, kept her on the back seat or in the trunk, took her a significant distance, ended her life, buried her, and disposed of any evidence that could implicate him in this crime. Judge Kimber sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. His lawyer described the act as a crime of passion and appealed for a more lenient sentence, but the request was denied. Relatives of Jasmine, who was buried alive, were present during the sentencing. In her statement, Jasmine's mother welcomed the verdict. "Today I don't feel happy. I wish I wasn't making this statement and that Jasmine was still here with me," she said. Rashpal Kaur told the court she is haunted by the thought of what her daughter Jasmine Kaur experienced in her final moments. "I go through the terrible sequence of events, wondering when she realized she was in mortal danger," the statement read. "There was no one to save her. She spent her last hour on this earth with the worst of humanity. Jasmine is gone and I am devastated with grief. She was a precious little girl." Rashpal Kaur stated that Singh was obsessed with Jasmine, who had rejected him 100 times. She lost her life because Tarak Jat wanted to force her into marriage and force her into a relationship with him, she said. Mrs. Kaur stated she would never forgive Singh for what he had done. "Justice has prevailed and I cannot express our relief. We welcome the sentence, but what I can say is that my family and I have already begun serving a life sentence, and we will have to spend the rest of our lives without Jasmine." Jasmine's employer and those she cared for described her as a beautiful soul who was kind, sweet, and attentive. Thus, 21-year-old Indian student Tarak Jat Singh, who abducted his former girlfriend, 21-year-old Jasmine Kaur, from a South Australian nursing home where she worked in North Plympton, Adelaide in March 2021, was sentenced to life in prison for a term of no less than 23 years without the possibility of parole. He bound her with tape and zip ties and then buried her while she was still conscious at Death's Peak near Hawker in the Flinders Ranges. Singh, who was 20 at the time, initially pleaded not guilty to the crime against Miss Kaur, but changed his plea a month before the trial in the Supreme Court. Judge Adam Kimber ordered Singh to serve a sentence of 22 years and 10 months without the possibility of parole, just slightly more than the mandatory minimum term for ending someone's life in South Australia, which is 20 years. While rendering the verdict, Judge Adam Kimber described the crime as horrific and extremely heartless, stating he was at a loss for words to describe the terror of Miss Jasmine Kaur's final moments. The terror she must have felt when she was abducted, tied up, and held in the car during the long drive to Moralan Creek is hard to fathom, said Judge Kimber. I cannot describe the horror that Miss Kaur must have felt when she realized that you were burying her alive. The court heard that Singh did not reveal details about how he abducted Miss Kaur from her workplace or what he did with her in the subsequent hours. However, Judge Kimber stated there was clear evidence that she suffered greatly and was forced to endure a long car ride while bound and gagged. After the sentence was announced, Judge Adam Kimber said it was clear that the crime was premeditated and that Singh took steps to conceal his horrific actions. The enormity of what you did must have been clear to you, said the judge. There was time to reflect. There was time to step back from the plan. Yet you proceeded and ended Miss Kaur's life. Judge Adam Kimber told Singh that he was beyond any reasonable doubt satisfied that the criminal was only concerned about himself. You ended Miss Kaur's life to punish her for her unwillingness to maintain a relationship with you and for turning to the police, he stated. The police had warned Singh about stalking in early February 2021, less than a month before the crime. During the sentencing, the court heard that Singh wrote several messages to Miss Kaur in the days before her death, which were never sent. At the trial, a statement Jasmine Kaur wrote to the police just 5 weeks before her death was read, detailing how her overly possessive perpetrator persistently followed her in the street and at her workplace. In the statement signed January 28, 2021, Miss Kaur disclosed that she had been in a controlling relationship with Singh for about 9 months. He was overly possessive and wanted to control who I spent time with, the document released by the Supreme Court stated. Miss Kaur told the police that she ended the relationship on January 4, 2021, but Singh took it badly. He stated that I had to be with him or else he would try to end his own life, she said. During their relationship, she mentioned Singh would sometimes get upset if she planned to go out with friends, calling her and demanding she come home. Singh, a citizen of India who came to Australia to study information technology at a university and who also worked at a nursing home, is likely to be deported once he is released from prison. Tarakjot Singh will be about 40 years old when he becomes eligible to apply for parole in January 2044. Jasmine Kaur became yet another victim of terror from a man, the attentive, sensitive, and kind Tarakjot Singh, whom she loved and trusted, turned out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, and his pathological jealousy and emotional instability cost her her life. A person who truly loves can never harm their beloved. They would take any blow upon themselves. In the case of Tarakjot, there is no right answer. Some may see in the story an insult, some incompetence, and others might consider the guy a psychopath. But looking at Jasmine's story, one can learn at the cost of her mistakes to prevent themselves and their loved ones from making similar ones in the future. Jasmine Kaur's case is a heart-wrenching story of toxic obsession and crime that shook the Australian backcountry, following the disastrous end triggered by the boyfriend's reprehensible behavior. A wedding is one of the most eagerly anticipated and heartfelt events in every woman's life. But not all dreams of happiness end with the fairy tale ending of, they lived happily ever after and died on the same day. Today we find ourselves in Somerset, England. This part of southwest England is famous for its well-preserved medieval castles, ancient towns, and legends of King Arthur. But these aren't the only legends that shroud the modern county. On the morning of September 12, 2012, a local resident named Orlando was rushing home after a long night shift at a gas station. He had promised his wife he would take their little daughter Maria to daycare. Loud music played in the car to keep him awake as trees along the road swiftly passed by one after another. Coming out of a sharp turn, he saw black smoke. Orlando slowed down. Smoke was billowing from a nearby parking lot, where a car was engulfed in flames. Orlando stopped, ran to take a closer look, but couldn't get close because of the fire. For minutes later, when the firefighters arrived at the scene, the car was completely burnt out. The arriving police cordoned off the area with safety tape to keep the gathering onlookers at a distance. The place was quite deserted so early in the morning, and there were no witnesses nearby who could describe the incident's exact moment. Upon examining the scene, a charred body was discovered. The police had to identify the victim and determine the causes of this dreadful death. There were no signs of a car accident or skid marks found nearby. Likewise, no tire tread marks from another vehicle were found. A car self-ignition or spontaneous combustion due to malfunctions became the police's initial theory. A lengthy investigation and multiple expert analyses were ahead. The remains were transported to the forensic laboratory to determine the identity and cause of death of the deceased. Fragments of the burned vehicle were also delivered to the forensic laboratory to identify any malfunctions and establish the cause of the fire. The police began their investigation by checking the missing persons database and recent reports of disappearances. Forensic experts quickly identified the deceased. She was a 23-year-old local resident, Catherine Wells Barr. On the same day, a report of a missing person was filed by Raphael Novak concerning the disappearance of the young woman. According to Raphael Novak's report, he left for work at 5:30 a.m., while his girlfriend, Catherine, was still sleeping soundly at home. Although they worked for the same company, his shift started 2 hours earlier. When Catherine did not show up for work after this time and Raphael couldn't find her at any of her relatives, he contacted the police. The investigation commenced. The police interviewed the victim's parents and sister, as well as Raphael Novak, who reported her missing, and all her colleagues and friends. Gradually, by piecing together information about the last days and, subsequently, the years of the young woman's life, they managed to reconstruct a sequence of events that led to her tragic demise. Catherine Wells Barr was born in 1989 to Phil and Jane Wells Barr in the United Kingdom. She was the second child in her family, with an older sister named Lynn. During the summer of 2010, while on a university break, Catherine met one of the employees, 31-year-old Raphael Novak, on a new vacuum cleaner production line. The tall, ruggedly handsome blonde quickly caught Catherine's eye. He was an immigrant from Poland, with a former wife and son back home. About 4 years prior, he had moved to England in search of a better life. Catherine and Raphael soon started dating. Initially, they met for lunch at the cafe on the production site, but these lunches quickly turned into romantic dinners. Raphael courted Catherine beautifully, gifting her lovely bouquets, taking her to movies, and going for walks. Raphael opened up to Catherine, sharing his past life and reasons for moving to the UK. Catherine's trusting heart let the blonde man in completely. Their relationship progressed so swiftly that within a few months, Catherine introduced Raphael to her parents. They joyfully welcomed their daughter's choice into the family, hopeful for the couple's future happiness. Soon, the lovers were planning their wedding. In 2011, Catherine graduated with honors from Bath Spa University and landed a promising job as a business analyst at Pneumatic International, the company that manufactures Henry vacuum cleaners. She quickly advanced in her career, providing good job opportunities for her parents and sister. Catherine was intelligent and well-educated. She always knew how to approach people, was concerned with her colleagues' problems, and was very attentive to those around her. Her kind gaze and radiant smile endeared her to people who held the young leader in high regard. Catherine Wells Barr's career was on a fast track to success. Her substantial earnings, combined with those of her partner, Raphael Novak, allowed them to purchase a spacious home with a terrace in Willow Way. Despite their financial well-being, the house was bought on a mortgage, for which the young couple secured insurance coverage as per their agreement with the bank. Youth, successful careers, and love. It seemed they had everything needed for happiness. Yet, the fateful day of September 12, 2012, marked a dividing line in their lives, changing everything from before to after. The investigation pressed on, uncovering new and unfamiliar facts about the lives of Catherine and Raphael. Over time, the veil of deceit that had enveloped their relationship from the start began to lift. 29-year-old Raphael Novak left behind a wife and child in Poland, fleeing to escape significant debts. He relocated to the UK, where he met Anna Ligvinovich. Since 2008, they maintained a close relationship. Then Catherine came into the picture. For a while, Raphael saw both women, but ultimately, he chose Catherine Welsbar, seeing her as a more viable option for a family and financial stability. While Catherine genuinely dreamed of a happy marriage with the man she loved and starting a family, Novak was plotting a scheme to end her life, intending to leave himself and his mistress Anna Ligvinovich with the life insurance payout and the large house, a significant portion of the funds for which had been contributed by Catherine. The plot of this crime was meticulously planned and executed with even greater cruelty and cold-bloodedness. On the day of her disappearance, after waiting a few hours, Raphael approached Catherine's boss to inquire about her whereabouts. He feigned sincere panic and despair in front of Catherine's colleagues and relatives. Catherine was not found at her parents' home, nor at her own. Her car was missing as well. Raphael recalled that she had been receiving threatening letters from a certain mentally unstable admirer for some time. Following this, her family contacted the police. The family was in the living room of the young couple's house, awaiting her return, when they were informed that a burning car with a body inside had been found. Raphael mentioned that the evening before her disappearance was entirely normal. The couple had gone for a walk after work, stopped by a store for groceries, had dinner, and then went to bed together after watching some television. Catherine did not appear scared or disturbed. However, a more detailed investigation proved that her death occurred earlier. Catherine was strangled around 2 a.m., likely in her own bed while she was sleeping. Her lifeless body was then placed in the car, taken a short distance from the house, and callously set on fire in an attempt to destroy evidence. Yet Raphael Novak had a solid alibi. He was at work from 5:30 a.m., and according to him, Catherine was asleep in bed when he left. The burning car was discovered between 6 and 7 a.m. However, Raphael was still at home at 1:30 a.m., significantly altering the case's direction. Thus, Raphael Novak became the prime suspect in the murder of Catherine Welsbar. Evidence allowed for Novak to be detained pending further investigation. Raphael claimed that Catherine was being pursued by a stalker who had repeatedly written to her and driven her to hysteria. During the investigation, it was revealed that Catherine indeed had accounts on several adult websites, indicating a hidden side of her life unknown to her close ones. Intimate photos and flirtatious exchanges with men were found, along with a letter from a secret admirer. However, no matter how long you try to twist the truth, it always comes to light. In an attempt to mislead the investigation and direct it towards a false trail, Raphael forgot to destroy the evidence proving his direct involvement in Catherine's demise. Importantly, this provided the prosecution with a motive. Upon examining Novak's phone, investigators discovered that he never ceased communication and meetings with Anna Ligvinovich. They actively met over the last few months. Additionally, it was found that the man had a financial interest as well, as shortly before Catherine's demise, they both insured their lives for a sum of £123,000. Catherine and Raphael were the sole beneficiaries of the insurance contracts and recipients of the payouts for each other. The receipt of a substantial life insurance sum emerged as the primary motive in the case regarding Catherine's demise and the arson of her car to confuse the investigation. Police discovered that on the day of her disappearance, Catherine sent a message to Anna Ligvinovich's phone. Also, surveillance cameras revealed that a few days before the crime, Anna, along with a relative, her uncle, filled a full canister of gasoline at a gas station. Thus, a third party became involved in the case. 32-year-old Anna Ligvinovich and her 38-year-old uncle, Tadeusz Dimitroshin, became suspects in the complicity of intentional crime and arson to conceal evidence. The crime was meticulously planned over several months by the trio. They prepared thoroughly for the act, creating accounts on pornographic websites, uploading photoshopped images of Catherine, and fabricating and saving exchanges with various men, all to lead the investigation astray with a false trail. They didn't resist the irrefutable evidence for long. When Rafael and Anna realized it was futile to deny any longer, they started blaming each other. The man insisted that Anna, out of jealousy, devised and executed the plan to eliminate a rival. In contrast, she accused Novak of committing the crime out of greed, aiming to secure the insurance payout and the house. In an attempt to avoid exposure, The conspirators wove a web of heartless lies around an honest and joyful young woman. They posted her fake profiles on websites used by people looking for casual, intimate encounters. The conspirators went to great lengths to conceal their crime, not only setting her body ablaze, but also fabricating a completely false backstory for her. They aimed to portray Catherine as a promiscuous woman, full of secrets and desires. They convincingly created the image of a mysterious lover who could have ended her life. One of the conspirators sent a text message from Welsbar's phone at 5:17 a.m. on the day of her demise to this fictitious man, suggesting she was headed to meet him. However, forensic experts determined that when the fire started in the car, Catherine was wearing only her favorite nightgown, not the outfit she would have chosen for a meeting with a man. They discovered a pillow was missing from her bed, and the only pillowcase had been washed and was hanging on a clothesline, leading the police to believe she was suffocated. In Anna Ligvinovich's car, detectives found a SIM card linked to the number Catherine was supposed to have texted that morning. In Ligvinovich's apartment trash bin, they found notes she had written, seeking inspiration for messages supposedly sent by the mysterious person. As soon as Novak and Ligvinovich realized the game was up, they both claimed that Catherine's demise was the act of a hired criminal. A week before the trial began, Ligvinovich asked a fellow inmate to secretly pass on a fake confession from an imaginary hitman who claimed Novak paid him £20,000 sterling to end Catherine's life. The story penned by Ligvinovich might have offered a chilling insight into what happened to their victim. According to this fictional hitman, Catherine's body was in the trunk of the car. Novak was very pleased that he ended Catherine's life. The supposed hitman wrote, "I helped him place her in the driver's seat." Novak removed the tape from her mouth and put on her shoes. He buckled her seatbelt and kissed her goodbye. At 6 a.m., I approached Catherine's car and, following Novak's instructions, set it on fire. Rafal Novak played the role of a loving boyfriend perfectly in the days leading up to Catherine's demise, holding hands and kissing her in front of family members. He told her mother Jane, "I've lost my world. I've lost my future." Rafal Novak refused to acknowledge his involvement in the young woman's death and went further, telling her mother Jane Welsbar that her daughter was receiving emails and text messages from an ex-boyfriend who said if he couldn't have her, no one could. To complete the narrative, he even claimed she spoke of taking her own life. Worse still, Novak let the distraught Welsbar parents comfort him, who believed he was also mourning the young woman he loved. Rafal's acting was so convincing that Catherine's mother, Jane, hugged him after her death and allowed him to call her mom. She said that after the police told her in the early days of the investigation that he was seen more as a witness than a suspect, she decided to offer him all the support possible. "I thought if Catherine loved him that much and he was part of our family, then he deserved to come back." The lengthy trial commenced under the chairmanship of Justice Sharp. The jury heard during the trial that the three defendants hoped to receive a life insurance payout of £123,000 sterling and half ownership of a two-bedroom home in Mangold, Somerset, valued at £137,000 sterling, following Catherine Welsbar's death. The court was told that Rafal Novak showed no emotion when police discovered the woman's body in her burned car on the morning of September 12. Anna Ligvinovich, who often shook her head and laughed on the defendant's bench when Novak suggested she was responsible for the crime, refused to take the witness stand. Dmitry Sheen also did not testify in his defense during the trial. Sharp told the defendants that the murder was a terrible, merciless crime, cold-bloodedly committed with a gross breach of trust. None of the three showed any emotion during the sentencing. Judge Justice Sharp sentenced the three Polish nationals to mandatory life sentences with a minimum of 32 years in prison without the possibility of early release. "You took the life of a beautiful young woman who had everything to live for, all for money," Sharp said. "Rafal Novak, the photos of you holding Catherine's hand the evening before her death, buying groceries for what you knew was her last dinner, are utterly chilling. Your emotions were directed only at yourself. Anna Ligvinovich, your behavior was deceitful, manipulative, and cruel. You played your full part in this horrendous crime. And you, Tadeusz Dmitry Sheen, it was a murder for gain. There were substantial aggravating circumstances and no mitigating circumstances," the judge continued. "Many tears have been shed in this court. But the only tears anyone should shed are for Catherine and her family. Her mother Jane, father Philip, and sister Lynn. The judge expressed heartfelt sympathy for Catherine's. They could never have known that behind the facade presented to them by Rafal Novak was a person devoid of remorse and decency. It was all about the money, the judge said. Novak and Catherine had no ties binding them. They were not married, nor did they have children. The crime against Catherine was motivated by money, selfishness, and greed, while in the case of Anna Ligvinovich, it stemmed from jealousy and a desire for revenge. At the request of the parents, Judge Justice Sharp read statements from Catherine's mother and sister. Her mother wept in the courtroom as her statement was read. It said, "Catherine was a caring, loving, sincere, generous, loyal, thoughtful, exceptional, and amazing young woman. She had a bright and promising future with much potential. As her parents, Phil and I, were immensely proud of the young woman she had become. The manner of Catherine's passing, a cruel, calculated act of villainy, and the hatred shown to her, will haunt us for the rest of our lives. I never got the chance to say goodbye, or tell her I love her, or for Catherine to say, 'I love you, Mommy.' Now, she considers Novak an evil person who should spend the rest of his life behind bars." Catherine's father, Philip, added, "We took him into our home. He became like a son and betrayed us all." During the trial, Rafal Novak, covered in tattoos, wept in the witness box, insisting he had no part in the demise of his true love. A father of one who has a wife and a teenage son back in Poland told the jurors, "Everyone is blaming me for something I never did." The court heard that Novak showed no emotion when the police discovered Catherine Welsbar's body in her burned car on the morning of September 12th last year. Her mother, Jane Welsbar, told the jurors that he didn't even mention Catherine, instead asking for a steak dinner after his initial release from police custody. Mrs. Welsbar said that as soon as they bought a house together and took out a life insurance policy, her daughter's fate was sealed. "I told the police her life had a bounty on it." Indeed, she had signed her own death warrant the moment she signed the mortgage. It was all over. Thus, 31-year-old Rafal Novak, a factory worker, was found guilty of the crime against his girlfriend, having suffocated her with a pillow while she slept. Afterward, he orchestrated a conspiracy with his secret lover and her uncle to claim a life insurance payout of £123,000 and a share in the house. His secret lover, 32-year-old Anna Ligvinovich, and her uncle, 38-year-old Tadeusz Dmitryshin, transported Welsbar's body in her car to a remote location and set it ablaze. It is believed that Ligvinovich and her uncle, 38-year-old Tadeusz Dmitryshin, who also lived in Taunton, took Welsbar's body in her Ford Focus to a remote location 7 miles from the city. They set the car on fire at 6 a.m., by which time Novak was already at work, providing him with a solid alibi. The jurors of the Royal Court of Bristol found Rafal Novak, Anna Ligvinovich, and Tadeusz Dmitryshin, all originally from Poland, guilty of the crime. The crime was the culmination of months of secret meetings and phone calls between Rafal Novak and his Polish lover, Anna Ligvinovich, with Catherine completely unaware of her role in what turned out to be a love triangle. The accused spent months leading detectives on a false trail, creating fake profiles for the girl on adult websites, and sending her messages from a supposed mysterious lover. Following the verdict, the parents of the young woman who lost her life, Catherine Welsbar, called for stricter immigration controls. Philip and Jane Welsbar, who have separated after the tragic loss of their daughter, stated that Rafal Novak, convicted of assaulting his wife in Poland, would not have been allowed entry into the UK if the immigration rules were as stringent as those in the United States of America. They blamed the European Union and stated that the UK needs to entry measures for foreign nationals. 46-year-old Jane Welsbar said, "People coming into this country are not checked. We didn't know Rafal had been charged with assault when he was in Poland. I'm absolutely certain our government needs to wake up and stop allowing such negative elements like Rafal Novak to roam freely in the country." Family members of Catherine Welsbar wept in court as the sentence was announced. The 3 perpetrators showed no emotion. The criminal trio received life sentences without the possibility of parole. Now they have their whole lives ahead to ponder over criminal schemes, but without any chance to put them into practice. Thus, through their own efforts, the Polish immigrants traded their dreams of a successful and wealthy life for free prison cells. After the verdict was announced, the victim's mother spoke her final words, describing her daughter. She was a beautiful girl, absolutely beautiful. We were so proud when she earned a first-class degree from the University of Bath. She was determined, hardworking, beautiful. We don't know how to go on without her. She had so much to live for. She had such great potential. She had so much for a happy life. But she was robbed, her life taken away. We were robbed. The case involving the crime against 8 members of the Rodan family became one of the most notorious and complex in Ohio. Overnight, the motto, "all for one and one for all," became fatal for each family member. Only the minor children were spared from the mass violence. The investigation spanned over 10 states in the USA. Detectives conducted more than 600 interviews, gathering around 700 witness statements. Various theories were considered: self-harm, retaliation by illegal substance dealers, and cult sacrifices. Attorney General Mike DeWine even suspected local residents of withholding crucial information. It seemed the investigation had hit a dead end, until a moment came when a solution lying on the surface became apparent. As it turns out, the most complex situations are often rooted in simplicity. This story illustrates how familial bonds turned into a bloodbath. In Pike County, Ohio, USA, it all began with a simple crush. Hannah Mae Rodan was 13 years old when she met 18-year-old Edward Jake Wagner. The young man invited her to the prom. From that evening on, they were inseparable. Their relationship elicited mixed feelings. Undoubtedly, the love that blossomed between them was visible to the naked eye. On the other hand, the age difference raised many questions and doubts. However, the young couple's parents did not obstruct their relationship. After all, everyone had been young once. Over time, the Rodan and Wagner families started spending weekends and parties together. Love was passionate and carefree. When Hannah turned 15, she announced her pregnancy. Upon hearing the news, Jake was overjoyed. He anticipated how delighted his family would be with the new addition. The Wagners highly valued traditions and lineage, hence adored children. In them, they saw the continuation of their lineage. Even ancestral names were passed down from generation to generation. Jake's father was named George Wagner III and his brother George Wagner IV. The Rodans, on the other hand, had a simpler, less ostentatious approach to children, but this did not diminish their family values. Christopher and Dana Rodan, Hannah's parents, remained very close and united even after their divorce. They loved their 3 children and dedicated their lives to their well-being. Unlike the Wagners, the Rodan family had a modest income. 40-year-old Christopher worked as a handyman at the Big Bear Lake family complex, while 37-year-old Dana was a nurse's aide at a youth rehabilitation center. Nevertheless, they managed to instill humanity and diligence in Christopher Jr., Hannah, and Clarence, Frankie. Everyone was thrilled about the arrival of little Sophie. To celebrate her birthday, a grand party was organized. Soon after, Jake suggested that Hannah move in with him and his family, arguing that it would make life more comfortable for both of them, a point hard to contest when living in a trailer. His logic seemed sound, but Hannah declined. By that time, she had come to understand her partner better and saw the invitation as an attempt to limit her independence. Moreover, the once caring and attentive young man had become suspicious and aggressive. Jake had resorted to physical aggression on several occasions. His rough behavior cooled Hannah's feelings for him. Her refusal became a bone of contention for the Wagners. Now, each of Sophie's parents was determined to gain full custody of the girl. The families began to advocate for their own interests. Driven by his desire, Jake went as far as to threaten his beloved. Angry that she refused to sign a document transferring custody rights to him and his brother. In a fit of anger, he once messaged her, saying that if necessary, he would take the daughter by force. If you truly loved her, you wouldn't resist. You would have long ago handed her over to be raised in a healthy environment, he claimed. For some reason, he believed the rodents posed a danger to Sophie. Such conversations continued for 2 years, during which Jake became more tyrannical. Hannah grew tired of the total control and in March 2015, completely ended the relationship. Moreover, she had come to know something alarming. It turned out that Jake's brother, George IV, had gained custody of his son by threatening the boy's mother with a weapon. This confirmed that the Wagners saw moral and physical coercion as acceptable means to protect herself and her daughter from this unscrupulous family. The young rodent decided to distance herself. She wanted to raise her daughter alone, while working as a nurse's assistant and finishing school. The situation worsened when everyone learned about Hannah's pregnancy. Although she claimed the child was from another man, Jake had his doubts. He attempted to find out if she was seeing someone else. So, in December 2015, he hacked into her social media accounts but found nothing incriminating. At the end of his search, he noticed that the woman was communicating with George Ivy's former mother-in-law, which sparked genuine interest. A court case was soon to follow, during which the Wagner family repeatedly interacted with the woman. "They'll have to eliminate me before they can take custody of my daughter," Hannah wrote in her message. Jake shared the details of the correspondence with his family, infuriating them. Then his maternal grandmother, 65-year-old Rita Newcomb, forged an important document regarding custody. Moreover, during a court session to determine the granddaughter's residence, Christopher Roden and George Wagner III had a serious disagreement. Ultimately, the relationship between the families completely deteriorated. Soon, a terrible idea occurred to the Wagner family. Hannah was so uncooperative that they felt the need to eliminate her, as well as the entire Roden family, who could claim custody of Sophie. This insane thought turned into a monstrous plan that solidified by Christmas 2016. Peoples during the festive season are usually focused on love and creation, which cannot be said for the Wagner couple, who organized a vote. It was decided whether they would implement their plan. All family members agreed. The only thing left was to assign roles and prepare. 5 months were spent studying the Roden homes and surveillance cameras, with special attention to their daily routines and work schedules. Each person in the criminal plot was responsible for something. For instance, Angela Wagner bought sneakers for all family members to wear at a predetermined time. To prevent the victims from seeking help, she acquired a special device to block communication, planning to secretly install it on the Rodens' phones. To minimize noise, George III suggested making homemade silencers. He also took care of the transportation on the night of the crime, aiming to secure a van that would not draw attention. Sophie was to stay safe at home with Angela, as the court had granted Hannah and Jake joint custody. The Wagners chose a time when it was their turn to look after the girl, meticulously planning every detail for a flawless execution. On the night of April 21, 2016, George Wagner III decided to visit Christopher Roden, allegedly to offer him a job opportunity that could improve his financial situation. The job offer was merely a pretext to gain entry into the house. Unsuspectingly, Roden Sr. opened the door. On the morning of April 22, 2016, at about 8 p.m., Bobby Jo Manley, Dana Roden's sister, entered Christopher's trailer. She did this daily since the day he had offered her a job. Bobby took care of the animals belonging to the Roden family. She noticed someone was inside, which was unusual for that time when everyone typically went about their business. Inside the trailer, in a pool of blood, lay Christopher and 38-year-old Gary, his cousin. The men lived together. In horror, she grabbed the phone and dialed emergency services, reporting what she had seen and requesting assistance at 4077 Union Hill Road. Shocked, Bobby proceeded to the homes of other relatives. She knocked loudly on one of their doors. Soon, a 3-year-old boy, Clarence Roden's son, appeared. She asked him where his parents were, but the boy did not respond, only pointing towards the bed. Entering the house, she screamed at the sight of 20-year-olds Clarence and Hannah Hazel, his wife. The couple was deceased, with their 6-month-old baby stirring between them, alive but splattered with the blood of his parents. After Bobby's 911 call, the police immediately headed to the given address. As they approached the Roden property, they were stopped by a neighbor. Sensing trouble, he asked the officers to check 2 more addresses of the family members. He was right. In the 3rd trailer, police found bloodied bodies. The victims were identified as Dana, 19-year-old Hannah, and 16-year-old Christopher. The attackers spared Hannah's youngest child, a baby girl only a few days old. Later, another victim was discovered, 44-year-old Kenneth, the elder Roden's brother, who lived a 15-minute walk from the others. By 2 in the afternoon, 8 victims had been identified: Christopher, Dana, Clarence, Hannah Hazel, Christopher Jr., Hannah Mae, Kenneth, and Gary. The only survivors were small children, a 3-year-old, a 6-month-old baby, and a newborn just 4 days old, along with 2-year-old Sophie, who was at the Wagner's home at the time of the incident. After examining the bodies, police surmised that all of the victims had been killed in their sleep by gunshot wounds. Detectives later pieced together the events of that night. The patriarch of the family was awake when the attackers burst into the house, as evidenced by a wound on his right arm. Christopher attempted to defend himself, but was hit with 9 shots to the head, torso, and limbs. 5 bullets were removed from Dana Roden's neck and head. The rest of the family was killed by gunshots to the head. Gary was shot 5 times, Christopher Jr. was shot 4 times, Clarence and his wife Hannah were shot 3 times each, and Hannah Mae was shot twice. Kenneth was the only one to be shot once. In total, the assailants fired 32 shots, some even posthumously. In addition, bruises were found on some of the bodies, indicating physical abuse. Since no one in the vicinity heard anything, investigators concluded that the perpetrators used silencers, indicating a carefully planned and executed act. It was clear that the victims were not random. Someone wanted revenge on the entire family. During the search, police found 5 Remington shell casings of different types and an unused bullet from a different model of gun. In addition, the scattered nature of the trailers indicated that more than one person had committed the crime. Leonard Manley, Dana's father, claimed the criminals knew the Rodens well, or the dogs would have been barking all over the pike. The question of who dared to commit such an act kept police officers busy. The Attorney General's office provided more than $20,000 for the funeral of the Roden family. The deceased were interred in several stages. On April 28, 2016, Gary was the first of the victims to be buried in South Shore, Kentucky. He was followed by Hannah Hazel, whose farewell was held on May 1st in the village of Otway, Seattle County, Ohio. The other victims were buried on May 3rd in West Portsmouth, in the same county. Many local residents came to say goodbye to the family and pay their respects. As for the fate of the surviving children, they were placed in the care of relatives. A wave of panic swept through the neighborhood. The police urged the relatives of the Rodens to take necessary precautions and advised all residents of Pike to stay away from their homes at night. The cold-blooded mass murder outraged residents across the state, who demanded that the results of the investigation be made public and that the perpetrators be apprehended as soon as possible. Cincinnati businessman Jeff Ruby offered $25,000 for information that would help arrest and convict those involved in the murder, but he later declined the reward offer. No less than 100 individuals were part of the investigative task force working on the Roden case. Following the funerals as part of the investigation, 3 trailers belonging to the slain family were towed away. The following day, several more vehicles met the same fate, all transported to a secure facility. This was done to preserve evidence and protect the personal belongings of the deceased. After the investigation, the family's cars and farming equipment were planned to be returned to the victims' relatives. Forensic specialists joined the investigation. Trailers were meticulously examined. However, no DNA of the suspects was found in any of them. Cameras had been installed in the mobile homes, but they too provided no information as they had been disabled. Those who planned the crime had thought through every detail meticulously. It seemed there were no significant leads until detectives discovered something. Cannabis crops were found at 3 crime scenes. In one location, there were about 200 plants. Officers believed the cannabis was grown for sale, not personal use, leading to speculation about the involvement of Mexican drug traffickers. However, the amount of cannabis found was too insignificant to suggest an attack by an entire cartel. In January 2017, a close relative of the Roden family was arrested for drug trafficking, which was considered a coincidental circumstance. Leonard Manley stated that his daughter had no involvement with the cannabis operations. "They're trying to drag Dana through the mud, and I don't like it," he asserted. Some family members confirmed that Christopher and Kenneth Rodan, the older brothers, grew marijuana, but were unaware of any large-scale cultivation. The theory of a family feud over criminally obtained money was also debunked. Alongside the prohibited substances, specialized equipment for breeding chickens for cockfighting, as well as cages with fighting cocks, were found at the Rodans. It soon became clear that illegal cockfights were not the cause of the homicides either. Months went by without uncovering the true motive behind the crime. It reached a point where, on April 13, 2017, local authorities announced they lacked sufficient evidence to make any arrests. Nevertheless, prosecutor Rob Young stated the investigation was ongoing, suggesting they had some leads they were not yet ready to disclose. Another year passed, and the second anniversary of the mass crime received little attention, with no coverage in the local press and neither the sheriff nor the prosecutor attending the memorial service. This led the community to believe the investigation had stalled. Unexpectedly, on May 12, 2017, a SWAT team raided a home in Pike County, 10 miles from the crime scene, initially searching for suspects but later revealed to be gathering evidence. Detectives also searched a house in Adams County once owned by Jake Wagner, though he had sold it by then. On June 20, 2017, the investigation publicly shifted focus to the Wagner family. 26-year-old Jake, 27-year-old George III, 47-year-old George IV, and 48-year-old Angela, who lived 15 miles from the victims. The Wagners had moved to Kenai, Alaska, citing difficulties staying in the area. They claimed to have loved the Rodan family, stating their deaths caused them immense suffering. Rob Young's words from a year earlier proved true, as the investigation had made a breakthrough and was now seeking information from the public on the Wagners' discussions about firearms, ammunition, vehicles, etc. 2 years prior. It wasn't long before the suspects, running low on funds, returned to Ohio, where detectives had gathered enough evidence for arrests, including proving Jake had hacked into Hannah's account. During the examination of the Wagner family's devices, search queries related to guardianship were discovered. It was also found that Angela had purchased sneakers for the entire family just a few weeks before the crime. The tread pattern of one of these matched that found in one of the trailers. Officers believed Angela was the mastermind behind the horrific scheme, with Jake as the primary executor. According to the investigation, each family member was involved in the criminal act. On November 13, 2018, the Attorney General announced the arrest of the Wagner couple, as well as their sons. They were charged with planning and carrying out the termination of life. Rita Newcomb, Angela's 65-year-old mother, and Frederica Wagner, George III's mother, were also arrested. They faced charges of perjury and obstructing justice. In 2019, Rita Newcomb underwent handwriting analysis, which proved her involvement in forging a guardianship document for Sophie. Later, to avoid imprisonment, she struck a plea deal. The charges against Frederica Wagner were dropped in June 2019. The other Wagners remained incarcerated, having refused to cooperate with the investigation. They denied any involvement in the deaths of the rodents and expressed sorrow over their passing, wishing for the real perpetrators to be caught. However, on April 22, 2021, 5 years after the tragic incident, Jake decided to make a deal with the prosecution. The agreement was that he would disclose details of the crime in exchange for all family members receiving life sentences instead of the death penalty. Wagner Jr. admitted to taking the lives of 5 out of 8 individuals. Thus, he pleaded guilty to 23 criminal charges, including 8 counts of aggravated crime. The remaining charges included burglary, conspiracy, illegal possession of dangerous ammunition, forgery of evidence and documents, interception of telegrams and oral messages, unauthorized use of property, obstruction of justice, involvement in corrupt activities, and unlawful intimate conduct with a young woman. He indicated that eliminating the mother was seen as the only way to secure custody of his daughter. By taking Hannah's life, he felt compelled to do the same to the other rodents, fearing they would seek vengeance and refuse to relinquish the girl. The next to stand trial was Angela. On September 10th, She pled guilty to conspiracy to commit aggravated crime, robbery, and evidence tampering. She also agreed to testify against the other defendants. In exchange, the charge of ending a life was dropped. Angela was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The trial of George Wagner IV began on August 28, 2022. The man denied any involvement in the crimes, insisting he was completely unaware. Conversely, the prosecution argued his participation in planning, executing, and concealing the crimes. Ultimately, George IV was found guilty on 22 counts and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The trial for George III is scheduled for February 2024. Despite his entire family being convicted, he continues to claim innocence, likely facing the same fate as his older son. This once harmonious relationship ended in tragedy. The collective madness of the Wagners is beyond understanding and forgiveness. Their actions left 3 children orphaned. What will become of Sophie when she grows up and realizes what happened? In their fight for custody and a facade of well-being, the Wagners deprived the young girl of loving parents, relatives, and a peaceful life. The Jared Bragan case, from love to contracted end of life. No matter how many years a couple has spent together or how happy their marriage was, divorces often lead to a breakdown in amicable or at the very least respectful relationships. But sometimes former husbands and wives part ways as true adversaries. Once close partners deliberately make each other's lives miserable, inflict harm, or wish for the other's demise. In rare instances, it doesn't stop at mere wishes, escalating to actual physical confrontations. Today, we'll examine such a case. To begin, it's important to note that the case surrounding the death of 33-year-old Jared Bragan, an employee of Microsoft and father of 4 young children, has yet to reach a conclusion. Currently, 3 individuals have been arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit a planned confrontation resulting in Bragan's death. 2 of them face the ultimate penalty of capital punishment. This sensational story that unfolded in the sunny state of Florida has, without exaggeration, shaken the entire country. The protagonists are parents of multiple children, once bound by marriage. The motive for the crime is alarmingly mundane: a refusal to split jointly acquired assets in custody of their offspring. However, the approach to ending Bragan's life resembles a complex detective plot. Let's explore how former spouses and deeply religious individuals became the worst of enemies and why it all ended in a demise. Who was Jared Bragan? Jared J. Bragan was born in 1989 in Florida, into a modest family where he was the second of 2 sons. He grew up alongside his older brother Adam, with whom he was practically inseparable from childhood. The brother's parents were devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. See, as a teenager, Jared met a girl named Mallory Bowden at church. The 2 developed a romantic relationship, and Bowden would later refer to Jared as her first true love. However, their relationship never led to marriage, as cohabitation was discouraged within their religious community. Therefore, when Jared graduated from a Florida arts high school in 2007 and decided to further his education in another state, they parted ways. Jared moved to Utah, where he enrolled in college, meeting his future first wife. In 2009, at the age of 20, Jared Bragan met a woman named Shauna Gardner at a friend's birthday party. She was 2 years his senior and came from a well-off family. She was also a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, previously mentioned. Shauna was born in 1987, and her parents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, were co-founders of a major company called Stampin' Up!, which specialized in the production and sale of decorative and craft items. By 2010, it was reported that their family business, headquartered in Salt Lake City, was generating an annual revenue of $100 million. Shauna has a sister named Sarah, who currently holds a managerial position in the family business. As an heiress to such a family, Shauna grew up in luxury and was accustomed to living a life of leisure without ever working in her trained profession as a chef. She was described as enthusiastic and somewhat fickle. According to Mallory, who was mentioned earlier, Jared was initially not too interested in his new acquaintance. However, Shauna went out of her way to entice him with her lavish lifestyle, hinting that together they could travel the world and do as they pleased since her parents would financially support them. Family life and the birth of twins just a few months after their first encounter. The couple got engaged, and by early 2010, less than a year after they met, they celebrated a lavish wedding in a temple in Salt Lake City, Utah, with the Gardner family covering all expenses for the ceremony and reception. This quick move to marriage was influenced by the couple's religious beliefs, which frowned upon cohabitation and lengthy engagements. Following their wedding, the newlyweds settled in Utah, where the bride's parents helped them purchase a comfortable home valued at about $1 million. Each spouse also had their own Mercedes, despite Jared still being a student at the time and Shauna not working at all. The couple traveled extensively around the world, sharing numerous photos of their exciting trips, expensive purchases, and leisure activities on their social media profiles. According to close acquaintances, Shauna's parents gave the couple around $10,000 monthly for various expenses and also granted them free access to their accounts. Moreover, after Jared completed his degree, his in-laws generously provided him with $100,000 to start his own business. In 2013, the couple welcomed twins, a daughter, Abigail, and a son, Liam. The family moved to Connecticut for a time, but soon after, Liam was diagnosed with a heart condition and lung issues. Doctors recommended moving closer to the sea, noting that it would benefit the child's health. The Bragans relocated to Florida, where they purchased a 2-story, comfortable home near the coastline at Ponte Vedra Beach, south of Jacksonville. At this time, Shauna actively managed her own blog on social media, portraying herself as a loving wife, a caring mother to the twins, a professional chef, and a woman passionate about travel and sports. She took fitness seriously and visited the gym nearly every day. Seeing her dedication, Jared decided to surprise his beloved and hired a personal trainer for her. The scandalous divorce shortly after moving, clear issues emerged in the marriage, though the couple stubbornly pretended everything was fine. Shauna became disillusioned with their religion, almost ceasing church attendance, while her husband remained a devout and exemplary member. This difference in religious commitment led to arguments, misunderstandings, and tension. Reportedly, Shauna also became disillusioned with Jared, whom she perceived as too lazy, having gained weight, and still only half-heartedly attempting to get his business off the ground. After completing online courses in programming and design, Jared secured a position at Microsoft, finally starting to earn independently. A few years later, he advanced to a senior manager role. Nonetheless, the couple grew increasingly distant, and arguments became a routine occurrence in their household. The situation escalated when Jared accidentally discovered intimate exchanges between his wife and her personal fitness trainer. According to some sources, Shauna had an affair, which the trainer confirmed in a phone conversation with Jared, though Shauna vehemently denied these claims. Jared then reached out to Mallory Bowden via email, lamenting that his wife had grown distant and emotionally attached to her gym trainer. Despite this, he expressed willingness to forgive the infidelity and preserve their family for the sake of their children. In 2015, after nearly 6 years of marriage, the couple began a contentious and scandalous divorce process. They contested over shared assets and custody rights for their children, far from amicably. Jared publicly accused his ex-wife of infidelity, which she categorically denied, claiming the marriage had simply lost its love. In response, she accused him of cruelty and offensive behavior. Shauna was unwilling to divide their home, cars, and bank account funds, arguing that nearly everything they acquired over the years was purchased or gifted by her parents. Jared had only started working less than a year prior, having previously focused on his studies and unsuccessfully trying to establish his business with funds from his in-laws. Jared contested this viewpoint, claiming at least half of their Florida home. Custody of the twins also sparked numerous disputes. Shauna claimed that Jared, whenever with the children, tried to turn them against her. He allegedly coached them on what to say about their mother, and recorded their statements to present in court. Jared, in turn, accused his ex-wife of comprehensive surveillance, including installing hidden cameras in their home, tapping his phone calls, and placing a tracker in his car to monitor his movements. Shauna sought sole custody of the children, and the exclusive ownership of their seaside home. She also claimed Jared threatened to withdraw all the money from their children's trust funds for his personal use. Jared countered by alleging his ex-wife evaded taxes by working off the books at her parents' company and receiving tens of thousands of dollars. New families, old disputes. By the end of 2015, the court had mandated joint custody of the children, but that hardly put an end to the disputes between Jared and Shauna. Even after their divorce was officially finalized, they continued to meet in court for nearly 7 more years, leading up to the tragic conclusion of their saga. By this time, both had moved on to start new families and have more children. In 2016, Jared met a woman named Christina, a fellow Microsoft employee, who lived and worked in North Carolina. Initially, their interactions were strictly professional, but they gradually grew closer, and a few months later, Christina moved to Florida to be with Jared. In the fall of 2017, they married, and by February 2019, they welcomed their first child together, a daughter named Bexley. In August 2021, their son London was born. Shauna, too, were married in 2018, tying the knot with Mario Fernandez, a man a year her junior who owned a real estate business. That same year, they welcomed their son Michael. The family resided in the same house where Shauna had lived with her first husband, Jared, the house that had been aground in their court disputes. The presence of new families did not calm the waters between the ex-spouses, who continued to file lawsuits against each other with new demands. Jared insisted that Shauna's new husband, Mario, should not be allowed to be with the twins if their mother was absent. Conversely, he wanted his new wife, Christina, to be fully involved in the upbringing of his older children. The last court meeting between Jared and Shauna occurred 4 months before Jared's death and was exceptionally tense. They exchanged another round of mutual accusations and contested the rights to their property. Shauna claimed that Jared was preventing her from using the family's larger, more comfortable vehicle for transporting the children because he was more concerned with humiliating the mother than with the convenience and safety of his own children. At this point, the court granted Shauna exclusive rights to use the larger vehicle and ordered Jared to pay her $600 in compensation. The tragic end on a secluded road. Per the agreement between the ex-spouses, Jared picked up the twins on Wednesdays for a family dinner, including their younger sister Bexley. Christina sometimes joined them, but after the birth of London, she spent most of her time with the newborn, preferring not to leave him with babysitters. On Wednesday, February 22, 2022, Jared, following routine, took the children to a coastal cafe after picking them up. After dinner and a stroll, he dropped the twins back at their mother's house and then headed home on his usual route. The journey typically took about 40 minutes, part of which traversed a rather deserted stretch of road without streetlights. It was here that Bragon encountered an unexpected obstacle. Driving slowly and cautiously, aware of his 3-year-old daughter asleep in her car seat, it was around 9 in the evening, and the sun had set when suddenly, in the headlights, he spotted a tire lying in his lane. He stopped, activated his hazard lights, and got out to move the tire to the side of the road. That's when the shots rang out. Jared had no chance to escape. The perpetrator, acting with deadly precision, fired several bullets at close range before fleeing the scene. The child, dozing in the car, was unharmed. A passerby, nearby at the time, heard the shots and cautiously approached. Discovering Jared lying in a pool of blood, he immediately called the police and paramedics, but tragically, it was too late to save the victim. The investigation and initial suspicions. Christina called her husband just minutes before the incident, and he informed her that he had just dropped off the children and would be home in about 15 minutes. However, 30 minutes passed, then an hour, and Jared was nowhere to be seen and stopped answering his phone calls. Anxiously trying his number again, Christina was answered by a police officer who informed her of the incident and requested her immediate presence at the Jacksonville Beach police station. The investigation team at the scene determined that the obstacle on the road, a tire, was the reason for Jared's vehicle stopping. They concluded that he had exited his car to remove the obstacle, but was then shot. His 3-year-old daughter, asleep in the car, was unharmed, indicating she was not the target of the mysterious shooter. Furthermore, no valuables were missing from the vehicle, where a wallet with cash, a phone, and a tablet were left, effectively dismissing the robbery theory almost immediately. When asked whether her husband had any known enemies, antagonists, or recent conflicts, Christina stated she was unaware of anyone wishing harm upon her husband, other than his first wife, Shauna. However, she refrained from making direct accusations without incontrovertible evidence. The police reported a lack of surveillance footage due to the absence of cameras on the stretch of road where the incident occurred. A witness who heard the shots claimed they broke the silence of the night, preceded by neither screeching brakes nor loud screams or any other noise. However, they did hear the sound of a vehicle speeding away, though nothing was visible in the darkness. Christina's suggestion of Shauna's involvement in the crime seemed plausible to investigators. Yet, detectives knew it was unlikely she acted directly, especially given her solid alibi of being at home with her husband, the twins, her younger son, and her parents who were visiting. The police decided to check nearby surveillance cameras. The footage showed an old dark blue Ford F-150 with brown trim entering the area about 15 minutes before the incident, and again a few minutes after the shots were reported by the witness. Detectives turned to the public for help in identifying the vehicle of interest. Jared's family made television appeals, urging anyone with even the slightest information potentially related to the case to come forward. The first suspect arrested, Shauna, and her current husband, Mario, were repeatedly called in for questioning, but vehemently denied any involvement in the murder. Shauna didn't hide the fact that her relationship with her ex-husband was complicated, but she insisted she would never wish harm upon the father of her children. She also shared with the media how the 9-year-old twins reacted to the news of their father's death. According to her, Abigail cried uncontrollably for hours, while Liam was in shock and silent for a long time. It's worth noting that neither the ex-spouse nor the older children attended Jared's funeral. Christina had told Shauna that her presence at the farewell ceremony was highly unwelcome, to which Shauna responded that if she wasn't allowed to be there, the twins wouldn't attend the burial either. It wasn't until January 2023, almost a year after Mr. Bragan's murder, that the first suspect was arrested. The police had been silent about the progress of the investigation, only noting that it involved considerable resources and effort. After an exhaustive search for the dark blue Ford F-150, luck finally smiled on the investigation when the vehicle was involved in an accident, but left the scene before the police arrived. This time, the incident occurred in a crowded area with many witnesses, and the offender was identified the same day thanks to multiple camera recordings. The car was owned by 62-year-old Henry Tienan, an unemployed man with previous convictions. He was charged with second-degree premeditated murder using a firearm, participation in a criminal conspiracy with the intent to commit murder, and setting up an ambush with an obstruction for the victim. Jacksonville Beach Police Chief Jonathan Paul Smith and City Prosecutor Melissa Nelson announced these charges during a press conference. It was also revealed that Tienan did not act alone and was giving testimony against his accomplices, though no other names were disclosed at that time to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. Understanding the severity of the charges against him and the lengthy prison term he faced, Tienan decided to make a deal with law enforcement, hoping his cooperation would be considered favorably during sentencing and potentially reduce his punishment. The criminal trio unraveled information soon leaked to the press that the accused, Tienan, had been renting a small house with a friend, owned by Mario Fernandez. Tienan's housemate was also brought in for questioning, but was unable to provide any valuable information about the case. He didn't even have personal dealings with the owner of their rental, only passing his share of the rent through Henry. However, a thorough search of the house revealed a hidden pistol in the accused room, which, according to ballistic tests, was identified as the murder weapon. This further implicated Tienan in the crime. On March 16, 2023, Mario Fernandez was arrested after Tienan officially pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Mario, whom he named as the contractor of the crime. Fernandez faced charges of first-degree murder, criminal conspiracy, and incitement to serious crime. Rumors swirled that Shauna was the mastermind behind the murder. This was supported by her former lover, a fitness trainer who recounted how she had expressed a long-standing dislike for her then-husband and wished for his demise. a tattoo artist where Shauna frequented, also testified. She recalled Shauna complaining about the endless legal battles with her ex-husband, wishing to silence him forever, and inquiring if she knew someone who could help. Initially taken as a grim joke, Shauna repeated her inquiry months later, clearly indicating her seriousness. Shauna Gardner Fernandez vehemently denied all allegations against her. She declared her intention to stay in town and assist the investigation. However, a few months after her husband's arrest, she moved to Washington with the twins and her youngest son. On August 17, 2023, she faced the same charges as her current husband. Arrested in her Washington apartment, she was extradited to Florida, where she would stand trial alongside the criminal trio. The motive for her actions was cited as complicated relationships with her ex-husband, a desire to avoid sharing custody of their 2 children, and the ambition to solely possess all disputed assets. The ongoing legal battle as of now, the case remains open and legal proceedings against all conspirators are underway. Henin has pleaded guilty to all charges, is actively cooperating with the investigation, and hopes for leniency. Reports suggest he faces at least 15 years in prison, a substantial period for someone of his advanced age, potentially equivalent to a life sentence. Mario Fernandez has only partially admitted his guilt, and exercising his legal rights, has refused to testify against his wife. On the other hand, Shauna Gardner Fernandez vehemently denies all charges against her. Nevertheless, prosecutors are seeking the death penalty or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the couple. Shauna's 3 children are currently under the care of their maternal grandparents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, and their Aunt Sarah. The case of Austin Harif, a handsome, honor student, athlete, and cannibal. Can a young, physically healthy, and strong man suddenly lose his mind, turning into a wild beast? And if such a transformation does occur, where should one search for the root cause of this drastic change? Experts believe that such mental disorders are often hereditary, can be the result of traumatic experiences, substance abuse, or social isolation. Austin Harif's case stands out. It's not just a sudden bout of madness, a wild frenzy, or a personality disorder. Medical professionals have classified his condition as clinical delirium of lycanthropy, and the press has dubbed him a cannibal. It's believed that young man suffers from a rare psychiatric syndrome where the patient believes they are transforming into an animal. However, the families of the victims, both injured and deceased from his transformations, are convinced that Harif feigned insanity to avoid accountability. Harif himself did not hide the fact that he had been consuming various narcotics and drugs for a long time, but examinations showed he was clean at the time of committing the heinous acts. Now, let's delve into this complex case from the beginning and trace how the scion of a wealthy and respected family, an honor student, and an athlete turned into a drug-dependent madman with an uncontrollable desire to taste human flesh. The golden boy Austin Malcolm Harif was born on December 21, 1996, in the picturesque resort town of Palm Beach, Florida, and was the eldest of 2 children in a wealthy and respected family of doctors. His father was a renowned dentist with a network of private dental clinics, while his mother was a leading pharmaceutical specialist. The Harifs lived in a large, luxurious home by the ocean. A year and a half after Austin's birth, the family welcomed a younger child, a daughter named Haley. From a young age, the siblings were very close, calling each other best friends. Despite their privileged upbringing, it didn't mean the children were spoiled. Their parents ensured they received a quality education and supported their holistic development and creative potential. Austin was a straight-A student in school, passionate about playing the guitar, seriously engaged in wrestling and football, and performed in an amateur theater group. He considered himself creative and ambitious. Along with his parents and sister, Austin traveled the world, spending his vacations in new places each time. In an essay written during his high school years, Austin described himself as a happy and optimistic person, with a vivid imagination capable of conjuring anything he pleased. He also mentioned his perseverance in striving for excellence in academics and sports. However, he acknowledged his shyness as a weakness, which sometimes made it difficult for him to interact with peers. When Austin turned 13, his parents decided to separate. His father left the family home to his ex-wife and moved into an equally luxurious residence with his new love interest, who soon became his wife. The children stayed with their mother, but their father remained actively involved in their upbringing and provided financial support. Soon, his mother also found a new partner, marrying him within a year, and he moved into their home. The teenage boy struggled with his parents' divorce, but it's worth noting that his emotional turmoil did not affect his academic performance or athletic achievements. Dreaming of a career in medicine to follow in his parents' footsteps, Austin aspired to help and save lives, aiming to gain admission to a prestigious college specializing in medical studies. An honor student and social outcast, in high school Austin transformed into a true heartthrob. He grew tall, reaching 6 feet 2 inches, boasted a muscular build, and was quite strong. His charming smile and innocent open gaze gave him an almost angelic appearance. However, Harif remained the same shy guy, which hindered his ability to socialize with peers and form romantic relationships with girls. In his personal diary, which he kept during his teenage years, he wrote about having almost no friends in school, as all his classmates labeled him a nerd and mocked him. The young man also expressed hope that everything would change for the better when he went to college, changed his social circle, and moved out of his parents' house. A few months before finishing high school, Austin discovered he had been admitted to the prestigious University of Florida's 4-year medical program. Successful completion of this program would open wide career prospects for him in the future, as well as the opportunity to continue his education at any medical school in the United States. The student was incredibly happy, as his dream had come true. Towards the end of August, his parents drove him to the college campus, where he was to begin his studies. Opening up in a vlog, Austin embarked on the independent adult life he had eagerly awaited, yet little changed for him. Due to his shyness, he still struggled to connect with peers. He briefly dated a lovely girl, but they soon parted ways because, as she put it, something about his behavior alarmed her, leading her to end the relationship. In his freshman year, Harif took a serious interest in bodybuilding, spending a lot of time in the gym and achieving impressive results. The young man developed steel muscles that looked very impressive. However, his success was not solely the result of perseverance and hard work. Steroids, which he began using regularly, also played a role. He openly shared this in his vlog on YouTube, which he started in the spring of 2016. Austin posted various videos on his channel. Some discussed sports and bodybuilding in particular. Others featured him singing with a guitar, doing cover versions of popular hits, or mimicking famous artists by copying their performance style. Still, others were about himself and his philosophical musings on life. Over time, however, his postings became increasingly alarming. The young man started urging his followers never to use steroids, claiming they could drive a person insane. He also said he had a crazy and normal side, and was confused by them. Austin began recording videos speaking in different accents, as if they were different people, sometimes changing the tone of his voice, or he could burst into tears mid-recording for no apparent reason. His mood and facial expressions also underwent strange transformations, at times appearing as if he was just making faces at the camera. Later, experts who reviewed his postings concluded that, in each one, the young man was virtually pleading for help. For him, this blog became the only outlet and a way to express his feelings, as he failed to make any real friends during his studies. Moreover, these video recordings traced how the student gradually lost his sanity, with his behavior becoming more sensational, provocative, and even aggressive. Austin's subscribers suspected he was using some controlled substances, and recorded his videos under their influence. They directly asked him about this in the comments, but he replied that it's unhealthy, and as an athlete, he would never use drugs. However, his behavior suggested otherwise, and one of the subscribers even speculated that Harif might have a dissociative identity disorder. What's wrong with Austin? When Austin returned home for the summer break, his mother and sister, who hadn't seen him in almost a year and hadn't watched his blog online, were literally shocked by the changes in him during that time. Austin had undergone a significant physical transformation, turning into a veritable mountain of muscle, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. He became odd in every sense, speaking nonsense and claiming he no longer needed sleep. Initially, His family didn't take his words seriously until the night came. Austin declared he would patrol the house, guarding his family's peace from some dark forces, and he indeed kept his promise, wandering around the house until morning. Moreover, every hour, he would check on his mother and sister's rooms, loudly assuring them they could sleep peacefully because he was on duty. The next morning, his mother decided to have a frank conversation with her son and directly asked him if he was using any drugs. Austin candidly admitted that he had tried virtually all drugs over the past year and even described how each one affected him. Among other things, he had taken a potent synthetic drug that caused severe hallucinations, fits of rage, and could lead to a fatal overdose. Nevertheless, he swore to his mother that it was all in the past, and he no longer touched the poison that drove him insane. After hearing her son out, Mrs. Hariff made what was perhaps the main mistake. She did not seek help from qualified professionals, deciding she could help her son cope on her own. Being an experienced pharmacist, she took matters into her own hands. She gave her son a sedative and a sleeping pill, thinking it would help him relax and fall asleep after a sleepless night. However, Austin, after dozing off for just a couple of hours, was back on his post by night. He resumed patrolling the house until morning, informing its inhabitants every hour that all was quiet and there was no need to worry. This went on for several weeks, but the mother still refused to involve psychiatrists or even inform her ex-husband about the situation. Early on the morning of August 13th, Austin knocked on the door of a former classmate living a few blocks from him. The girl was quite surprised since they hadn't seen each other in over a year, and he hadn't warned her of his visit. When she asked the reason for his appearance, Austin said he had forgotten what year he was born and urgently needed this information. The puzzled classmate answered that it was in 1996, after which the young man abruptly turned around and left without a word. Austin stunned, scared, and puzzled the girl, so she immediately called Mrs. Hariff and told her everything, asking if the boy might be using prohibited substances. Only then did the woman decide to call her ex-husband, who was working in another state, and shared her concerns that something was seriously wrong with their son. The boy's father flew to Florida the next day and, after talking with his son, suggested he voluntarily check into a clinic for an examination, to which the young man categorically refused. Then the man had a heart-to-heart conversation with his ex-wife, and together they decided to send their son for compulsory examination and subsequent treatment in a drug rehabilitation or psychiatric facility. However, they were unable to do so in time. A disturbing confession the next day, Austin's friends invited him to join them at the beach, given the hot and sunny weather. His mother insisted that Haley go along to keep an eye on her brother. Austin was excited about the outing but dressed unusually warm for the beach, as if heading to the mountains instead. He wore a thick athletic hoodie with long sleeves, matching pants, boots, and ski goggles. When his friends saw him dressed like that, they were initially silent, then burst into laughter a few seconds later. They teased Austin, asking why he was dressed that way, and if everything was okay with him. Austin became seriously angry, shouting that if they thought he was crazy, then he would act accordingly and end one of their lives. The boys didn't take his words seriously but backed off, just to be safe. Haley noticed her brother was on the verge of a breakdown, so she decided to talk to him and calm him down. During their conversation, unheard by the others, Austin told his sister that he wasn't entirely human but half-wild animal, immortal, and possessed superhuman strength. His words frightened her, but she tried to remain calm to avoid provoking aggression from her brother. At the beach, Austin acted completely normal and natural. He joked, laughed, played volleyball with friends, and goofed around. As evening approached, they said their goodbyes, and everyone went their separate ways. Austin and Haley headed towards a small restaurant near the coast where they planned to meet their father and his current wife. On the way, Austin told Haley he intended to test his immortality, then headed towards a busy highway, planning to cross it inappropriately, directly through the fast-moving traffic. When Haley realized what was happening, she ran after her brother and physically dragged him away, begging him to hurry because they were expected. Austin agreed that they shouldn't make anyone wait, and silently followed his sister. At dinner, Austin behaved oddly again, silently getting up from the table several times to go outside, looking around as if he feared someone, then returning. He then decided to tell his father and stepmother about his immortality. When his father calmly suggested seeking professional help, Austin jumped up, shouted that he wasn't insane, shoved his father hard, and ran out of the attack on an elderly couple and their neighbor. What unfolded after the young man left the restaurant could be straight out of a horror movie. He later claimed to have no memory of the events and couldn't believe he was capable of such brutality. Austin walked several miles until he wandered into an unfamiliar neighborhood. There, the bright light from an open garage drew his attention, and he made his way towards it. In that home lived an elderly couple, 59-year-old John Stevens and 56-year-old Michelle Mishkin Stevens. In the evenings, they enjoyed barbecuing and watching movies in their spacious garage, set up like a living room. They had been married for over a quarter of a century, had 3 adult children living on their own, and were now enjoying their retirement and each other's company. That evening, John went for a walk with their dog while his wife prepared everything for their usual movie night. When Michelle saw an unfamiliar young man on their lawn, she felt no threat and even asked if he needed help. But the situation took an unexpected turn. The couple's neighbor, Jeffrey Fisher, lived across the street and was on friendly terms with the Stevens. Around 9 in the evening, he heard suspicious noises outside. Looking into the yard, he suddenly heard Michelle's agonizing scream. Without hesitation, he rushed to help his neighbors and saw a tall, large young man attacking the elderly woman by the open garage. Jeffrey tried to pull the stranger away, but the young man was overpoweringly strong, knocking Jeffrey to the ground. As he tried to recover, the assailant stabbed him several times in the back and shoulder. Realizing he was overpowered and needed help, Jeffrey ran into the Stevens house to draw the attacker's attention away from himself, and after exiting through the back door, headed to his own home. Only once inside did he realize the assailant had not followed him, but returned to the unfortunate Michelle. Jeffrey immediately called the police and emergency medical services, reporting an armed attack by a stranger with a knife, and that he had been injured along with his elderly neighbor. After speaking with emergency services, Jeffrey fell silent, listening intently. Soon, he was convinced no one was outside his door, and the attacker had stayed at the neighbor's home. Moreover, the assailant was now making strange, animal-like sounds, similar to the growling of a wild beast, accompanied by screams of terror and moans. Fatal assault and gruesome act. It took the police about 10 minutes to arrive at the scene, but by then, it was tragically too late. The sight that greeted them was horrifying, and beyond any logical explanation. 2 officers approached the garage, weapons drawn, only to freeze in disbelief at the doorway. There, in a pool of blood, lay the lifeless body of the homeowner, Michelle Mishkin Stevens. The autopsy later revealed she suffered multiple blunt force traumas to the head and a stab wound to the chest. A bit further in the dim light, 2 more individuals were on the ground, but it took a moment for the officers to process the scene. One man reached out, pleading for help in a strained voice. Above him was another man, seemingly choking him, gripping his neck with one hand and tilting his head back with the other. The officers demanded the attacker release the victim, threatening with their guns, but he showed no reaction. Firing was too risky due to the chance of hitting both individuals. Instead, one officer pulled out a taser, warned he was about to use it, and moved closer. Only then did he see the assailant was not just attacking, but actually biting the man's face, holding his head and neck firmly. The victim, as you might have guessed, was John Stevens. Beneath him spread a vast pool of blood. His left cheek was missing a chunk of flesh, and his lip, nose, and ear were also mutilated and seemingly chewed off. The elderly man was immobilized, barely able to move, silently begging for help. The officer shocked the attacker with the taser, but he seemed unaffected, continuing to tear at the victim's face with his teeth. A kick to the assailant's face only made him growl loudly and bite into Stevens' cheek again. Subsequent kicks did little to deter him. Reinforcements arrived, including a police dog, which was unleashed on the frenzied young man. The dog latched onto the assailant's arm, but he seemed to feel no pain, breaking free and injuring himself further. A powerful kick from an officer finally disoriented the attacker long enough to handcuff him. At this moment, the young man claimed he felt unwell, possibly having eaten something bad, before losing consciousness and convulsing. Emergency medical teams transported 4 individuals from the scene. Mrs. Stevens could not be revived, and her husband succumbed to his injuries en route to the hospital, due to extensive blood loss from stab wounds and the shock of having his flesh consumed. The injured neighbor who reported the incident survived, but suffered permanent minor motor skill damage to his right hand due to nerve and tendon damage. As for the attacker, he slipped into a coma after ingesting a substance from a bottle in the garage he mistook for alcohol, which turned out to be the perpetrator. He suffered severe burns to his esophagus and stomach, spent several days on the brink of life and death, but was ultimately saved by medical professionals. Fragmented memories. Austin spent nearly 2 weeks in a coma before he finally regained consciousness and was able to give his account, claiming he remembered nothing about the events of that day. Gradually, he began to recall the dinner at the restaurant and the argument with his father, after which he walked away. He then described seeing a ghost-like figure that led him through dark alleys and unfamiliar neighborhoods until a light appeared in the distance. The source of the light turned out to be a lantern near the Stevens garage, where the homeowner was preparing a barbecue and taking out food. When his presence startled the woman, she called for help. Austin admitted to striking her several times and then, drawing a knife, declared he would rid her of evil. At that moment, a man, neighbor Jeffrey Fisher, attacked him, whom Austin perceived as a demon, and he retaliated with the knife. After Fisher ran to seek help, Hariff continued to assault the woman until she showed no signs of life. He then noticed a bottle, mistook its contents for alcohol, and drank about half. Soon after, he heard a dog barking and a man's voice. The homeowner had returned, shocked by the scene. Austin claimed no memory of what happened next, at least according to his own statements. Initially, there was speculation that Austin was under the influence of potent narcotics, which might explain his aggression and insensitivity to pain. However, when he was tested at the hospital, his blood showed no traces of drugs, medication, or alcohol. This led to the conclusion that Austin might have had a psychotic break, acting without awareness of his actions. Determining the truth of this claim was left to experienced psychiatrists. Between the courtroom and psychiatric care, the case of Austin Hariff gained widespread media attention due to its unprecedented brutality and ambiguity. The children of the deceased couple, as well as the relatives of the injured neighbor, were convinced that the young man was feigning insanity and memory lapses in order to be declared incompetent and avoid severe punishment. This sentiment was shared by the majority of those following the case. The state-appointed psychological and psychiatric expert, Dr. Landrum, noted in his report that Mr. Hariff's mental illness led to an acute psychotic episode, resulting in the death of 2 people. However, the prosecutor argued in court that he did not believe the defendant met the legal definition of insanity at the time of committing the crime. There were suggestions that the young man's mental health had deteriorated due to his experiments with various narcotics, steroid use, and difficulties in socializing with peers, which he had experienced since school. However, at the time of the crime, he was clean, with no traces of illegal substances or alcohol found in his blood, indicating that the reasons for his aggressive behavior lay elsewhere. During one of the court hearings, Austin's father revealed that there was at least one confirmed case of schizophrenia in their family, and he feared that this severe illness had been passed on to his son. It's worth noting that the student was suspected of having a rather rare disorder known as clinical lycanthropy delusion. Such a diagnosis could explain why the young man behaved like a wild beast and was impervious to pain, but none of the psychiatrists examining the defendant confirmed it. After treatment, Austin was transferred to jail, but the case remains unresolved to this day. The young man is still awaiting trial, and his lawyers insist that he is mentally ill. Meanwhile, the relatives of the deceased couple and the injured man have expressed hope in interviews that Hariff will be found competent and sentenced to death for his heinous acts. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope the stories gave you something to think about or dream about. Sleep well, stay safe, and don't forget to subscribe. Good night.